Okay, okay.
Okay, we are up and running. So I would like to introduce Andrew Kap, who is our speaker, our guest this evening. He has been here once before, and I was able to get his book since he was here the last time, and I really, really have enjoyed it immensely. It has become one of 3 books that I feel very strongly about, as far as I can pick it up, and I do pick it up. Like every day I pick it up and I just open it to wherever. Right now I've opened it to the Blitz method. And you can pick it up and read a little bit of it and just get so much out of it. And I have that in the hallowed stack of these are my 3 fave books. Just in case you're curious, this is Karen Laurie's Chronic Pleasure, and this is the fellow we had last week, Rex Basham, Grow Your Happiness. And I love having these books in paper form because I can just pick them up and just get a little nugget out of them and just savor and just feel my vibration raise. So on that note, I would like to invite Andrew to share anything as he is inspired to share about his book, about his life, how this all came about, what he's doing now, if you want to share that. And also, is it okay if people chime in with comments and questions, or would you rather they hold those to the end?
If people are so inspired that a question comes up, by all means, please feel free to interrupt, raise your hand. I will probably be counting on you, Karen, and you, Mark, to notice it, because I'm the kind that I don't really, walk and chew gum at the same time, so I might not notice if someone's asking. So I invite, if I'm not noticing, I invite anyone to kind of speak up and interrupt me, because I'm happy to answer any questions that might pop up. And
Okay.
I'm also super grateful to be here again. You might hear me cough a couple times. I've been talking so much this week, but I did not want to miss this. Like when you we were figuring this out, I kind of even knew in the middle of a very busy week that this was going to be like a treat, and it was going to be a reward. So like no matter what, even though I've been talking a lot this week, I'm super excited to be here. I'm also, like, I take it, I mean this. It's I think it probably comes as a cliche, but I really take it as such a high compliment that my book, excuse me, is one of those choice books that you keep on your pile, because I think, we all have our books that we read, and we all have our ways of consuming information. And there was a time in my life, where I would literally like have stacks of books like right next to my bed, and sometimes they'd be on the bed when I would sleep, because I wanted easy access to them. So I understand that visceral feeling of excitement, enthusiasm you get when you have to pick certain ones. You can't have 100 books there. So I really do mean it when I say, oh, it's one of 3 that you have right now. I take that as such a high compliment. I also find it's very very appropriate in the sense that, before writing the book, I was obviously very familiar with Abraham. In my Dream About Learning Law of Attraction, Abraham was one of those key points of understanding things. And one thing that I've always appreciated about Abraham is, and I guess we'll hear from Sue at some point in the future about, interacting with Abraham. When you go on Abraham, you go like on a hot seat. Abraham's answer is to that person, but it's translated and expressed in a way that there's something for everybody within that answer. You could have someone in perfect health asking about a relationship issue, and there's someone on the audience with the opposite, thing going on, and they get something out of it. And the reason I bring that up is because when I was writing the book, it was one of my intentions that the way with which the information was presented had a simplicity to it, but also a universality, that's even a word, but while at the same time being able to really strike someone on a personal level in everything that was said. And obviously that's quite a challenge. That's quite an endeavor to kind of go after. But then again, if I'm going to be brash enough to call it, to literally name it the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, I've got to be willing to go down those roads. So I guess just for clarity, for anyone that's read the book, you probably will notice I was very intentional about making it relatable, about making it something where it's like, okay, we all understand law of attraction, especially intellectually, especially if we've not been fortunate enough to have enough life experiences through it that we can cognitively say, okay, this is a law of attraction thing. We always understand it intellectually. So I was so intentional about like, what examples can I use that will link up that people did have a life experience, and I guess as a good concept to bring to people as an example from the book, because I think this is something people can really relate to when they're trying to manifest, is the concept of what I call manifestational raindrops. And the way I link that up, of course, is everybody can relate, regardless of whether you thought you've manifested something or not. Everyone can relate to being outside at some point. It's overcast and you start to feel like that little tickle on your skin. And then a couple seconds later, you see like splotches on your clothes. And then a couple seconds later, there's like bigger splotches on the pavement. And then there's sound. And like before you know it, it's a torrential downpour. And okay, since everyone has been through that, why not use that as an example, assuming I can, to connect that with the way the law of attraction works? And the way I connect that is, that just as, when you have that little slight tickle on your skin, the storm that follows is inevitable. Like that tickle that you feel isn't like, oh, I wonder if it's going to rain. It's like, no, not only is it going to rain and is it going to be like a huge downpour, but technically the downpour has already occurred. You just haven't caught up with it physically yet. And the thing is, it's a downpour of abundance. Like, you find a penny on the street, it isn't just 1 cent. That is an indicator, a raindrop, that the universe is showering you with financial abundance. But it's in your recognition of that, in your celebration of that, that you are metaphorically and energetically lowering your umbrella of resistance that had been preventing you from receiving the experience of the storm.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, again, it's raining there no matter what. We're all being showered with abundance. But if we have a bad day and we're frustrated, we're going to be in our mood, and we're not going to be allowing ourselves to receive good things, to receive wonderful unfolding events and things of that nature. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of like, okay, have this recognition. The storm of abundance is always falling on you. And by the way, it's very easy for me to say this, but I am the first one to admit that every mistake that I'll ever call someone on, or every way in which I will call someone on preventing themselves from receiving, I've been guilty of that myself many times over, and it still happens. Just because I wrote this book doesn't mean that I'm this perfect person who's always in line. It does mean that I have, for myself, a nice reminder that I can always go back to keep myself on that path and to keep focused in the right way, so that I can be way more successful and way more prolific at inviting those good things, which fortunately I've been getting better and better at that just as I've been going on in my life. But yeah, I guess, circling back, long-winded way here, I just think it's important that if we're going to really engage with the law of attraction, because I know Abraham readers don't put it this way, but non-Abraham readers kind of think of it as like, oh, I'm going to start using the law of attraction or start doing law of attraction. It's like, no, law of attraction's happening. The only thing you're going to do, if anything, is consciously and intentionally engage with it in a way that will hopefully enhance the likelihood of you receiving more of the things that you want and less of the things that you don't want. But it's happening. So for me, I think it's very strategically important, with that understanding of trying to not only have law of attraction as this intellectual concept, but to relate it to things in your life that match up with an experience that you've had, so that you're hijacking your own understanding of it and your own perception of it in a way that you really do feel it and experience it on a deep way, even before some dramatic manifestation occurs in your reality. So whether it's the manifestational raindrop or it's anything else, it's so important. What can I do to match this up with, experientially with my, with what I've been through in my life, that's like, oh, okay, of course, law of attraction makes sense. And of course, now that I know that, I can be a lot more enthusiastic and a lot more confident and a lot more consistent in the way I go about this, in the way I engage in manifesting methods and techniques, or whatever you might, or as Abraham would call it, processes, engaging in that in a way that's just going to invite things more and more for me. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm a strategy guy. For me, it's like, as long as I understand that this is the way it is, me just being a cerebral person, I have to ask myself, what can I strategically do with this understanding of the way that the universe works, that I could just enjoy my life more and I can just invite things more. And for me, the answer is, okay, find methods and find a way of doing those methods where they aren't a chore. They aren't something that you feel is an obligation. They aren't something that you have to grit your teeth through. No, there's something that you look forward to, that you're excited about, that you're happy about, that you're enthusiastic about, because when you're on that level, you're going to do them consistently. And the consistency will lead to the momentum, and the momentum will lead to the results, which will lead to the enthusiasm, which will lead to the consistency, which will lead to the momentum, which will lead to the results, and like on and on and on and on an upward spiral. So yeah, I guess it's my long-winded answer of your feedback on my book. It was all about making sure that whoever read it ideally would be able to, if they'd been pinching themselves off, they would give themselves enough of a level of self-permission to do this one more time for just long enough that they get some kind of experience. Because once they've done that, it's not me teaching them or changing them. It's not my book teaching or changing them. It's their own life experience. It's their own reflection through the universe. And once you have it on that level, it could never be taken away from you. And that's what's so important. And I'm projecting here, I don't believe Abraham readers struggle with this in the same way that other people, non-Abraham readers that still follow law of attraction, where a lot of times they're like, oh, this isn't working. What's going wrong? Why isn't this happening? And because a lot of people misunderstand what this is about and how it's supposed to be applied. And me personally, I'm not that this is a requirement, but I'm a huge proponent of saying, listen, I'm going to put out these positive intentions, these positive visualizations. I'm going to put out being grateful in general, and I'm going to know what I want, but I'm also going to have a relaxed confidence in that I'm inviting the universe to pleasantly surprise me. Because when I take that weight off my shoulders, it frees up my energy. And more often than not, the universe not only gives me what I want faster, but also gives it to me in a way that's even better than I would have imagined, and that I would have probably required or tried to force, which ironically would have held it back anyway. So and that's why, I love Abraham's message of like, just do what you can to feel good. Because when you're doing that, you're in the right vibration and things are happening. And I have a thing I've been saying a lot where, we're always going to want something. You can meet the love of your life, but you're going to want then the finance to be fixed. All right, you've got the love of your life. Now you've got a mansion, but you're going to want, to be popular. Okay, you've got that. Well, now your health, you've been at this so long, your knees bothering you, your back sore. Like there's always going to be something that you want. And when you have that recognition, and like Abraham would talk about, being incomplete, well, then you can enjoy in the meantime, because you're always going to want something. And then the trick is, how do I enjoy life in the meantime? Because when you think about it, in the meantime is all the time that you ever have. Even after you get what you want, okay, there's still in the meantime for the next thing that you come up with. So I believe it's such a crucial thing, especially again, in the face of frustrating circumstances, manifestations that you might not enjoy or appreciate or assign a negative meaning to. In the midst of all that, what can you do to be as happy and grateful and content as possible, happy with what you have, grateful for what's on the way, in a way that you could enjoy it, just not only for the fact that like, hey, why you don't want to waste your life, but also again, strategically, when you're doing that, you're allowing those things to come to you so much more easily. And just because you brought it up, I think the Blitz method is a wonderful way of doing that, because I think, the methods that I teach, and I think, a lot, I noticed this a lot in, the processes that Abraham teaches, it's got to be a level of simplicity. And I've never heard Abraham articulate it this way, although I doubt Abraham would disagree with me. I think there's something to be said for laying something out in clear, user-friendly instructions that you can follow to the letter if that's your personality. But by the same token, there's a flexibility built in where if you want to change the steps or do something different, all that really matters is that you're using that method or that process or that technique or whatever you want to call it as a means of feeling good while thinking about what you have or what you want or both. That's the way I describe and distill it. It's all about strategically. Jonathan, you had a question. And you're still muted, my friend. There you are.
Not so much a question, but a statement. And from what you say, you sure Abraham would agree with what you are saying. It has been said to hot seaters who have come into the hot seat and said, oh, I am using this process, but it is not one of your processes. Excuse me. And Abraham has always said this: whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I just I'll put that penny worth of information in there.
Thank you for that reminder and acknowledgement. Thank you. And yeah, I think I remember hearing that recording also. In my memory, and I'm sure it's probably asked more than once, my memory is not that Abraham said this in these words, was like, who cares? Cool. Like whatever works for you, that's all that matters. And I'm also glad that you brought that up and you made that clarification, Jonathan, because that's another thing where I try, I don't try to model myself off of anyone specifically, although I will be inspired in any way I can. And one thing I've always appreciated about Abraham was the open-endedness of, listen, you don't have to do it our way. It doesn't have to be this way. There is no perfect right way. There's options, there's possibilities, and there's what's going to work for you. And I'm in such agreement with that, and such a huge proponent. And I would hope that's probably why the book is very well received by people, because and again, I want to say this very hesitantly, because some books aren't trying to make things difficult, but I think some books, non-Abraham books, inadvertently make people think that it has to be a certain way, otherwise they're screwing up. And I think that's the worst message you can send, because as it is, we as humans often build our own limitations, and we often find creative ways of getting in our own way. Last thing you want to do, I would say, as an author, is feed them information that's going to make it easier for them to do that. So, and I think, again, these are well-meaning people when they write these books. They're like, listen, this worked for me, hence I've made this calculation in my mind that's going to work for everyone, and I care so much that I want them to do it perfectly. So these are all well-intentioned stuff. It's just my opinion that sometimes the best of intentions won't often find their way to the people that need it in a way that they need to receive it in order to be as successful as they can with it. Anyway, I'm talking a mile a minute. I'm not sure if any comments or feedback is popping in addition to Jonathan's, or any questions.
Okay, Andrew.
Hey, Brent, good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you. Good to see you too. Thanks for coming on again. It was very, very stimulating last time. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points you said before, and to quote what Abraham Hicks says, it's kind of the better it gets, the better it gets. And you were saying that, when people can start to build this upward spiral of actually putting the things into practice, having them in their experience, and then seeing the results, and then going again, and being able to move in the direction that they want. It's I don't know if you come across the term. It's many people will call it a virtuous cycle, or a virtuous circle.
Yes.
Everybody's very familiar with vicious circles or vicious cycles, downward spirals, but we tend to overlook that there is the opposite. There is the virtuous circle, and I mean that's from nobody's to blame, nobody's a victim here, but often it's a learned thing. We look at TV, we look at the stories that are presented to us, and we say, oh yeah, everything's bad, everything's going wrong, and we focus on the problems, and it's a kind of natural tendency. And as you know, to touch on what you were saying before, it's, and paraphrase a bit, it's kind of a matter of retraining yourself, rewriting your script in a sense. The blitz method is great, to have this list of positives, and you were mentioning that before, and all the things that you like, and all the things you're grateful for, and really blitzing it, really, here, hit these points, in this book, and do it as a practice, and that can change the momentum. I talked before in this group about a thing called a strange attractor, which is very, very briefly, it's a thing in physics. It's a thing in what's called chaos theory. And in physics, you're aware that there's what's called a gravity well, which is, very dense bodies they bend time and space around them, and so that the time-space continuum becomes more compact, and that's what causes things to fall into them. Now, if you've got two of those wells that are equally distant, and some object is moving equally at an equal point between them, it can go one way or it can go the other way. And that's always happening in our lives, always happening at certain points in our lives. And what in chaos theory they call a strange attractor, something, it's what people know as the butterfly wing effect, or the butterfly effect, when a butterfly can flap its wings in China and cause a tornado in Kansas or whatever it is, because of this chain of events. And everything, again, in your book, you talk about choices. Everything is a choice. We're always about choices. So we can, when we've got what we want and what we don't want, we're in the middle, we're sort of at a point where we can be attracted either way, if we can use the blitz method, or these positive reinforce, these virtuous circles, as to paraphrase, as I say, then you can actually shift towards what you're wanting. And that's something, well, you don't actually say this in your book, but that's something that comes to mind as I'm reading your book. I read your book, is that these techniques, and it's all, as you say, strategies. It's all about strategies. Get the right strategies in place in your life, and you're going to be able to automatically almost move towards that vortex of what you want. You're going to be able to tip to that strange attractor, which is what you want. So the blitz method, the scripting method, is one I really like too. So I just, as you were talking, any comments, those things came up.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting when you're talking about the strange attractor. I'm not sure if this relates specifically to that same topic, but it reminded me of the double slit experiment that I think a lot of people are familiar with, where they shoot a laser, and I'm going to butcher this. I mean, people can check out What the Bleep Do We Know, or they could find it on YouTube. But basically, there's an observer effect where when you actually are watching what happens, you, as the observer, by nature of observing it, are affecting the outcome. And I think that is, as a layman, that in and of itself is a strange attractor. You being an observer and choosing a specific line of focus, choosing to focus on gratitude versus, lack of appreciation, or whatever it might be, is going to make an impact. And one other thing, the thing that you started off with, you had made a comment on, the cycle or the circle of virtue. And I think one thing is important for people to keep in mind, because they hear that. And again, I'm trying to relate something in terms where it'll crystallize in our minds so that we can follow along on it and follow through on it and get a result. But there was a book, I actually looked it up while you were speaking because I'd forgotten the name of the author. I didn't want to get it wrong. There's a book called Mastery, The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment by George Leonard. And he taught this thing called a mastery curve. And basically it's something where, like, say you're trying to learn guitar. Well, for a while, like, you're kind of like going along your plane because nothing seems to be happening. And then boom, you kind of shoot up. You get like a point where you're like inspired, and you achieve a level of expertise on one aspect of it, but then it plateaus again. And you have to like kind of like run through that. And eventually, boom, there's another spike, and then it plateaus again. And the thing is that the reminder, if I remember the book, is like when you're in that plateau, it's a reminder that, lack of evidence is not evidence of lack, and lack of progress doesn't mean that you're not actually, like, lack of evidence of progress doesn't mean progress isn't being made, because sometimes you don't actually see it. Now, I would argue that this circle or cycle of virtue, sometimes not only is it like a straight up mastery curve where you get a manifestation and then it seems like nothing's happening for a while, but if you stay doing the methods, if you stay appreciating, another manifestation or another boost will happen. Also, sometimes I think people, they'll go along a path and they'll do the methods and it gets them in a certain mood and they go up a little bit, and then something happens later that day and they dip, and then they go along and then something good happens. In other words, they're not just going like in a straight line, they're going up and down, up and down, up and down. But over a long period of time, whether it's a week or a month or a year, this up and down is still trending upwards. So that by the time you're up here, your low of the day is still way higher than the high all the way back here. And I think it's a wonderful thing to remind people of, because again, we all, at least in my experience, still, we have our challenges, we have our frustrations, we have things even in the midst of appreciation and gratitude and wonderful things. It's so important when those things happen to say, all right, well, this isn't something that I need to focus on and worry about. It's simply one moment in time. And I want to have this understanding that things are still getting better, things that I want are still coming to me. And I'm going to strategically have that recognition and strategically lean into appreciation and allow things to unfold in a better way, even when those instances happen that I don't assign a positive meaning to. And I found in my own life that, when it happens, bad things, we'll call them bad things because we use that wording, they happen less frequently. And when they happen, more often than not, it's less of a negative impact. It's something where I have a more resilient mindset and a better attitude in life overall, that I can kind of get through that and then move on to the next positive thing. So that's what you reminded me of when you were talking about the cycle or the circle of virtue.
Okay. Thanks for that, Andrew. I'll just jump in here again, because as you were talking, that reminded me of something else that I came across when studying teaching, and that's what's called, and I'll tell you the term. It sounds a bit strange. It's called the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development. It's by a guy called Lev Vygotsky. He was a Russian educationalist. Anyway, look, very simply, he's got these 3 zones, where the outer zone is what's called what the learner cannot do. Okay, and with law of attraction, a lot of people cannot do it. A lot of people struggle with it, and as your book points out, a lot of people know it intellectually, but they can't do it. And then they've got the next zone in, like they're concentric circles. The next zone in is what the learner can do with aid, with support, with guidance. And the inner zone is what's called what the learner can do unaided. Okay, what they can manifest in their reality by themselves without any help. And this is where I think your book would sit. Your book would sit in that second ring, where you're helping people. Okay, and we all need that. We all, nobody, unless you can somehow get direct knowledge to the universal energy or source of wisdom or whatever. Everybody needs a helping hand, a stepping stone, or whatever it is, in these different zones. And so that's where I think your book works so well, in that you give these strategies, as you say, you give these techniques and these steps that people can really understand. And as you were saying before, they can put them into their experience. because as Abraham Hicks says, and again, I might butcher this, words don't teach, experience teaches, or something like that, and we don't understand things unless, to use the word you used before, we have a visceral feeling. We feel it in the viscera, in the gut, in the the real core of the being. And so this transition between these zones, the zone of what you don't know, you can't do, and the zone of what you can do without any help, this is where the journey is. And a lot of people think that, oh, I want to go to doing things unaided. I want to go to the mastery straight away. And the book of about mastery, you've got that curve, okay, and you've got the plateaus, and that's what these zones are like. You go from absolute not knowing to doing something where you are aided, and you sort of plateau there, and then you can eventually move on to another plateau where you're doing unaided, and you don't, you can move on to the next big thing, the next big goal. It's a little bit like learning to ride a bicycle. A little kid can't learn a bicycle, then their parents put them on a bicycle with trainer wheels, or they push it behind them, and that they practice like that for a while, and then the trainer wheels come off, and then they can ride by themselves. And eventually if they keep on doing it, they'll become BMX world champion or something like that. But or maybe not, or maybe they just enjoy riding around the park. Who knows? Okay, so yeah, that's kind of the same sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to to hear you put it that way. One thing where I think kind of lends itself to my style of content delivery is I've always been interested in the human condition. I've always been interested in human psychology, because I always wanted to figure out, why was I getting in my own way? One thing I answered in the book, and I'm happy to answer here also, is like, why is it that people get excited about law of attraction? They start using it, they start to get results, and then they still stop. It isn't even a thing where, like, I mean, some people don't get results, but some people, like, they get results right away, things start happening right away, and they still stop moving with it. It's like why? It's like, what? Well, I mean, there's another ways of looking at that, but I think it's really important to understand that, we as humans, like, in this state, we have so much going on in our mind, and there's so many ways of explaining it. Like, one thing, and I never thought that I'd bring this up on a call or a group meeting for around Abraham, because I believe Abraham's content has transcended this, and technically I believe my content has transcended this. But this is an interesting anecdote. Certainly it'll take you far in dinner parties. And hopefully I'm just describing it right. I think it's just pronounced a Johari window, if I'm saying it the right way. And it's kind of 4 levels along the lines of what you were just describing. Like, one level is unconscious incompetence, meaning you don't know what you don't know. But then as you move forward in whatever journey, now it's conscious incompetence. You still don't really at the level you want, but at least you're aware of it. But as you keep moving along, now it's conscious competence, because now you're moving in forward motion. And then finally, like, the highest level is unconscious competence, where you're in flow and things are just happening. And the reason I said that I believe, like, Abraham's stuff and my stuff is transcended it, because not that stuff is better, but it makes that a bit of a moot point, because all I want to do, and I believe all that Abraham wants people to do, is have people engage in processes or methods or techniques or whatever you want to call them, to let the energy move forward in the right direction. And then that stuff will happen anyway. You'll get to the level of unconscious competence without having to know what the Johari window actually is. So again, I think it's really interesting for dinner parties and to have a conversation and get people thinking that might have not heard about law of attraction, might not be working on themselves, might not be giving themselves permission to improve their lives in any way. But by that same token, it's all about, again, like, and I think we're in agreement, like, what can you do to just get yourself in a place where you are leaning in the right direction, about feeling good while thinking about what you have or what you want or both, and letting the universe respond to that vibration, letting the universe respond to that energy, letting the universe match up with that way of being for who you actually are. And I realized, as I was talking about the Blitz method before, I didn't actually say what it was. So for anyone that's wondering, to answer that question, it's basically, and you could almost liken it to a rampage of appreciation, although I I don't know how much it matches up. It's been a while since I even read Abraham's description of that, but it's really just, setting a timer and thinking of as many things as you can to be grateful for. That's really it. And the really cool thing is you could set a timer for 30 seconds or 90 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever you want. And you could make it a free for all where you're just picking things out of thin air. Or you can say, all right, I'm going to make the theme my body, or I'm going to make the theme my job, or I'm going to make the theme my relationship, or I'm going to make the theme everything in the room that I'm like, I'll just look around the room. It could be anything or nothing, but it's really just an easy way of saying, like, listen, there's no complicated steps. I'm just going to set a timer and think of things to be grateful for. And in my own experience, 30 seconds in, you're like, well, yeah, cool, whatever. But 90 seconds in, and 120 seconds in, as you get in, and as you think of more and more things to be grateful for, you can't help but feeling like $1,000,000. There was a method that I taught recently on my YouTube channel, and it was in recognition of, here we are in November, so we're between Halloween and Thanksgiving. So technically we're still in what I call pumpkin season, although it's a lot more prominent in October when there's more Halloween decorations out. But I came up with this thing, I call it the pumpkin season method, where basically what you do is you take a nice stroll around your neighborhood, assuming that you're in a part of the world that celebrates Halloween and Thanksgiving and has decorations out, and you use the things that you see as cues to feel grateful. For example, like if I'm walking around the neighborhood, every time I see a regular pumpkin, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop and think of something that I'm grateful for in my present. Every time I see a jack-o'-lantern, I'm going to think of something I'm grateful for my past. And every time I see a scarecrow or a skeleton or whatever, I'm going to think about something in my future that I'm looking forward to having that I'm already grateful for. And by the way, you can swap the rules out, and there aren't so many jack-o'-lanterns up anymore, but you can still do that with pumpkins and scarecrows. And then by that same token, when Christmas season rolls around, I call now it's not the pumpkin season method, it's the merry manifesting method. And now I'm like, okay, every time I see a different colored Christmas lights, I think of something present. Every time I see a light up Santa, I'll think of something from my past. Every time I see a snowman, I'll think about something in my future. Like the whole thing is like, what can you do strategically to use your environment that's already changing in service to you as an excuse to feel better about yourself? And by the way, anyone in the world where they don't celebrate this stuff, okay, walk around the neighborhood and okay, every time I see a garage, or every time I see a red car, every time I see a tree with a certain kind of color of leaves or whatever, like there's no rules, there's no limits, there's no restrictions. It's all about saying, all right, let me get out into an environment and have a nice, good walk in a way that it's going to make me stop and think of all these things I'm grateful for. So by the time I get back to my home, I feel like $1,000,000. I feel so happy, so grateful. I've really engaged in appreciation in a new, fun way. And the really cool thing is knowing that I'm going to do this, I'm going to walk down a road that I haven't walked down in a few weeks because I don't know where the pumpkins are. I don't know where the scarecrows are. So it's going to be a pleasant surprise where I don't know when the universe is going to cue me to do that thing. I just know that it's part of my path and part of my process on the way back to my home. And again, I think it's a really fun thing, and I highly encourage people to try it out. Hi, Sue.
Hi. I just want to pop in some feedback about that, because what you're describing is a habit of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you can create a habit that you look at something and go, oh yeah, I'm going to do this because I've created this habit. Yeah, that just is such a wonderful way of incorporating something that I think I have to sit down and do. And I'm really crappy at sitting down and doing those things. So I really like what you're saying. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that phrasing of it, a habit of fun. I love that perspective. And again, me, like I am of the mind that you only need one process or one method. And as long as you enjoy it, that's everything you need. But I also recognize that us as humans, we sometimes will get bored, we'll get restless, we'll get impatient, and we crave novelty and we crave variety. And that's why I don't know if I'm known as this person, but I'm someone that tends to do it, where I just keep coming up with more and more methods. Like the book has 19 or 20 methods, but then you go to my YouTube channel and I keep coming up with new methods because I just like trying stuff for myself, and I also just like experimenting. Like I'll give you a preview. It's queued up. It's scheduled to go live tomorrow. So I've never formally taught it on a wide scale, but I have a new method where I admit I don't like the title. I haven't found a catchy title yet, but I call it, I think the grace to gratitude method, or grace of gratitude. I've even forgotten what the title is, but basically it's on that premise where, I think as growing up, regardless of whether you were religious or not, you always notice people would say grace, even on television, they're saying grace. And I remember when I was a kid, it was very surface level for me. I'm like, all right, they're doing this because they're supposed to. It's just they're, they're going through the motions. And it wasn't until I learned about law of attraction that I actually understood, at least from my viewpoint, the purpose of that. And I remember, the book's not popping in my head, but I remember reading somewhere where it talk about, like, listen, when you're having food in front of you, you want to infuse good feelings and gratitude and appreciation into that, because you're basically making the food healthier for yourself, and you're making your body more receptive to it, and you're enhancing your vibration, doing all these things simultaneously, right? So it's about saying grace. You're blessing your food, which is then blessing your body, which is then blessing your life, right? And I said in the video that I'm publishing tomorrow, okay, cool. What else can we do this with? Well, we all have phones, right? And we all have apps on those phones, and we all have apps that are for us. We choose to download certain apps because there's certain aspects of our lives that we care about or invested in. What if just the way that you sent that positive energy to food, you looked at your apps and like, okay, I'm going to send positive energy to my banking app because that's going to lead to financial abundance. If I'm single and I have a dating app, I'm going to send positivity and good vibes and love and light and abundance to the dating app because that's going to infuse my energy with success in relationships. Me as a YouTube creator, I'm going to send it to my YouTube studio app so that I'm going to get more exposure, or on Facebook because I want to get more reach on social media, or on my phone because I want to get more phone calls from friends, or like any kind of apps that you have that serve your life in any way. Like you can use your phone as a vehicle and as a conduit for positivity, then you're sending that vibe for that aspect of your life. Again, is this a required thing? No, but it's another fun example, another fun optional method or process to engage in. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about having fun, keeping things interesting, mixing it up, and making sure above all else that when you wake up in the morning, and maybe you want to do your process in the morning or night, whatever it is, whenever it comes time for you to do that every single day, it never feels like a chore. It never feels like, oh, I got so much to do. That, by the way, is, and this is my thing. I think 5 minutes is more than enough. I'm like, or 30 seconds, but it's all about me knowing especially how busy I am. I never have to wake up and be like, oh, I'm not in the mood to do this. I don't like, no, because I know when I have that attitude, I don't want to be thinking about stuff then, because then I'm pushing it away inadvertently. And I've said this before, but like the one method that I do every single day without fail is actually a cooperative thing where I do pull out my phone and I turn on the recorder app and I record a message of all the things I'm grateful for, and I send it to my friend across the country, and he does the same thing for me. And I don't think we need accountability partners. It's not a requirement. However, if you can strategically install social pressure in that you don't want to let that person down, but you have an easy task so that it never feels like an obligation, it's really the sweet spot. And on January 8th, will mark 4 full years that I've been doing this with him, and I haven't missed a day, meaning he's been around to watch the book get published and to watch 80,000 plus sales, and to watch, me telling all the wonderful emails I get from people, and getting to go on groups like this and all these other things. And I've seen all these things happen in his life. And, I was doing running the numbers. Like, I've basically been doing this for over 1,400 consecutive days, not missing one day. Like, what kind of power? It's because I have an easy thing where I can record for 30 seconds or 90 seconds or 5 minutes. More often than that, it's 5 minutes just because I'm a chatterbox. And you can do the same thing to me. And if I'm, if I'm coughing or I don't want to talk, all right, I don't have to record it. I will type it and text it and send it that way. No limits, no restrictions, no requirements, no excuses to stop myself from doing it. Only endless possibilities and options to keep me on track in a way that I'm enjoying it and looking forward to it. And, again, don't feel like you have to find someone to do this, but anyone listening, if you do find someone and they're willing to kind of stick it out with you, it becomes such an interesting thing because, one, if you're like me and my friend, it's not predictable. Sometimes I'll send it first and sometimes he will. And then like the person that hears the message first has that as an inspiration that leads into their message. But also while you're tracking your life and you're leaving these recordings, you're tracking theirs. And it's so amazing for me to remember when we started and where he was in his life, and to see all these dramatic leaps that he's made in all these areas in terms of his career, in terms of his relationship with his kids, in terms of finances and all these things. And it's such a cool thing to be like have a front row seat to that, all because I'm fortunately was intelligent and methodical enough and cerebral enough to kind of make this the thing that I do every single day that I can count on.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Can I just jump in again? I've got a few thoughts bubbling away here. Look, backtrack a little bit. You were talking about, things going well. Again, like I was saying a bit before, but like a virtuous circle, a virtuous cycle. It reminded me of, everybody knows the word serendipity.
Yes.
Serendipitous. So things are serendipitous, happy accidents or, good fortune and things like that. And the more, as Jonathan was saying, the better it gets, what works for you and, apply those things. Interesting story about the etymology of serendipity, the root of the word. It's was written by a guy called, or coined by a guy called Horace Walpole, way back in the 18th century, and he saw a picture of a painting that had been lost, and it was it referenced a fairy tale from the Middle East, and it was called The Three Princes of Serendip. Now, Serendip is an old name for Sri Lanka, for Ceylon. It used to be called Serendip, then Ceylon, then Sri Lanka. And these three princes did were they used to wander their kingdom, sort of every day, and they would be expecting to find something marvelous, something that would enthrall and excite them. So they were always making these discoveries by accident. But they started with they didn't have a quest. They didn't say, I'm going to go out and find a, beautiful flower or, whatever it was. They just said, something great's going to happen to me. And so they set up this expectation that they would come across something that would please and delight them. And that's where we get this word serendipity. And, it's a matter of being able to practice this idea of serendipity, as you were saying, Andrew, it's a matter of applying it every day. And you say, maybe you only really need one method, and this could be a very good method for a lot of people. The one method would be expectation. Just expect that something good is going to come. Always, and Jonathan will know this one because he's a Monty Python fan. If you've seen the movie Life of Brian, and they finish with a song called "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." It's a bit tongue in cheek, a bit sarcastic, but it's because it's when the hero is getting crucified at the end, and somebody else who's next to him says, "Oh well, don't worry, always look on the bright side of life." And that's sort of the key, because as I was saying before, we can get attracted to one way or the other, one side, the wanted or the unwanted. And if we look at again, another song, "Keep on the Sunny Side of Life," that old song from down south somewhere, I'm not sure where. Anyway, we can practice these things until they become habitual. And
Yes.
as Sue said, that's a fantastic thing. A habit of fun. That's a great term. So if we can have habits of fun, habits of expectation, habits of positive expectation, then we can do that. And there's lots of techniques in your book, Andrew, that I really like. One that I've been using recently, just a little bit, not quite connected to it, but it's the 10 minutes ago one. I wonder if you could maybe explain that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that method. So again, with the understanding of human nature, people oftentimes find ways of getting in their own way. So, for example, you tell them, well, visualize yourself getting what you want. And they're like, oh, well, I don't know how exactly how I'm going to feel. And I can't replicate, I can't make, then there's a frustration and they start doubting themselves. In other words, they find these blocks. And I'm like, all right, let's bypass the blocks. So the 10 minutes ago method is basically, rather than, for example, like, let's say you want to get a job interview, right? Rather than imagining the person calling you up and giving you the job interview because you've told yourself for some reason that you can't visualize how that would feel, could put yourself 10 minutes in the future of that good news, 10 minutes after you got that, because the thing about that is there's a flexibility and freedom in how you can feel. Maybe you're still super static, or maybe you've calmed down. In other words, there's such a wide spectrum of where you can feel 10 minutes after the good news or 10 minutes after the manifestation, that it's like an end around. It's a fun, easy, non-pressure way of visualizing what you want without having to visualize what you want, without having the pressure of it. So yeah, that's basically 10 minutes ago, like, all right, I won the lottery 10 minutes ago. What's happening right now? Am I still jumping for joy? Have I gotten to the stage where I'm texting people? Have I gotten to the stage where I'm contacting attorneys and making sure that people aren't going to try to, sue me or whatever? Like, what are, like, and from a positive negative standpoint, what makes it feel real, right? And yeah, that's basically the 10 minutes ago method. You're putting yourself 10 minutes in the future because you got that good news or you received that manifestation 10 minutes ago. What are you doing? How are you feeling? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you like? What is happening in that moment? What is the circumstance? And it really gives you an opportunity to vividly engage in something without that pressure. So thank you for asking about that. And just a quick aside, because you were talking about serendipity and the etymology of it, which I love. An interesting serendipitous point, when I'm doing that daily message to my friend, one thing that I probably haven't also missed a day in saying since I started doing it is I'm grateful for the good news today. I always say I'm grateful for the day's good news. And I get good news basically every single day. Sometimes it's amazing news. Sometimes it's good news. Sometimes I don't notice it until the next day. I'm like, oh, that thing happened. That was good news. Like, you never know what form to take, but I'm relaxed about it. I'm open-ended about it. Like, so the universe can go on any level that it wants. And because of that, it opens up my energy and makes it very easy for me to keep receiving good news over and over and over again. So little strategy point for anyone that might want to try what I do, say thank you for the good news. And when you do it, breathe in as you're doing it. Like, because like me, again, I'm a chatterbox and I talk a mile a minute. I will rattle thing over, off and off. That's da 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 da. When it's time to say good news, I like to stop myself, like, and I'm super grateful for the good news today. Like, I'm just trying to give myself an extra pause and an extra energetic boost of consideration of that moment as I'm doing it. Not overly pressuring, but just trying to give a little bit more of an honoring because it's so immediate. It's definitely happening. I just want to make sure I'm in tune with it as I do it.
Okay. Okay, Karen, you want to jump in? I've got a few things, but Karen,
this is so good. It's just a great conversation. I appreciate everything that's been shared. I was just going to say with that 10 minutes after that you guys brought up, I did practice that because we have Thanksgiving coming up. And so I'm not the best cook in the world. I'm not even probably well, I don't know how to categorize myself, but let's just say as the day gets closer and I'm trying to think of my menu and I gotta get the groceries and then I want to go into what if that turns out like it did last year? What if that goes bad like it did last time? Or what if anyway, so that's an area with cooking. That's one of the various areas where I can kind of get a little bit negative. And I was starting as like, I was feeling like my anxiety start, I was thinking, well, who's going to be here? And anyway, just all the things that you don't know and you can't control. So by golly, I did it where it was 10 minutes after our last guest had left. And I turned to Mark and I say, didn't that go well? That all went so well. The food, the games, the conversation, everything. And I just love how that will clean up that stuff that that gets, and it just, it's so powerful. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Awesome.
It
Thank you.
helped.
That's so
It,
good to
it really
hear.
helped me feel better, and it will help the outcome. And maybe the food will be edible this year. Yay!
I have a funny feeling it's going to work out even way better than you even imagined. Way better.
I was just a phrase came, a term came to my mind as Karen was talking. Look, I think a lot of people get in to use the word she was using, a state of anxiety. So it's kind of anticipation anxiety, and the 10 minutes ago method works so well because it's more like achievement relief.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this relief of achieving it, and that's what you need to be focusing on, because you get more to focus on. There's another woman who does channeling. Her name's Sarah Landon, and she says, look, you don't get what you want, you don't get what you need, you get more. You don't get more of what you want, you don't get more of what you need, you get more of what you are. And if you are anxious, you'll get more anxiety. If you are feeling relief, a sense of relief, you get more relief. And so again, the book, the techniques, the strategies in your book, Andrew, are so great because they help us achieve that feeling of relief, that feeling of achievement, and then we are that feeling of relief, and that's what we attract to our life. That's what people, as your title says so well, it's the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, because a lot of people don't get it because they say, oh yeah, I'm thinking positive thoughts, but what they're really doing is picking, as Abraham Hicks says, they're picking up the wrong end of the stick. They're focusing on the lack of things, and they're putting they're putting the energy into that, and then they're going around saying, well, why isn't it working for me? Something, it doesn't work. It's something's wrong with this, it's flawed. But really, it's again, as Abraham Hicks will say, it's sloppy thinking. It's people indulging in this these thoughts of anxiety, these thoughts of lack, and it's getting in their way. And as we talked about before when you were here last time, Andrew, reading your book, I saw you use the word ego, and you're saying it's the ego, and I kind of said, in my mind, I was using the word survival ego.
Mm-hmm.
It's the body, the mind, the body especially is set up for what's called homeostasis, which means staying the same. And that's why people find it so hard to lose weight. They lose weight and they put it back on again, because the body, saying, oh, look, we've survived this far, we've got this far, at this weight or this condition or whatever, and I'm not going to change it. Any change is threatening. And so that becomes kind of self-sabotaging. And I don't know if you use it in the book, Andrew, but the idea of inner speech, the inner speech that we use with ourselves, is is it picking up the wrong end of the stick or the right end of the stick? Are we creating a vicious circle, or a vicious downward spiral, or a virtuous circle? And as you mentioned in your book, Andrew, it's a matter of the techniques, the strategies that you have there are a kind of way of bypassing this survival ego, bypassing this resistant part of the psyche, and going to what you want. So it's really important, the words we use, the way we speak, the habits, the choices we make, the choices of thought, the choices of thinking that we make, are really important. And that's what I like about your book in a lot of ways. It's a big aha moment for me.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the acknowledgement of relief, because when I was putting together the methods and putting the steps out and articulating the way to do it, relief was such a huge, important aspect. I wanted to be a vehicle of relief. I wanted to be a conduit by which they achieved relief, because as we all know, that once you do that, you are on your way. And I guess to speak further and answer your question, the way I described it in the book, and this is my definition of the ego, but I really describe the ego as that part of your mind that's only interested in your survival. And it's really interesting because, that part is looking around, and wherever you are in your life, whatever money problems you have, whatever relationship, whatever health problems, it's looking around. It's like, well, my person's alive. I don't know if I want to risk the status quo of what might happen if they lose that weight or they get that promotion or whatever it might be, because the way I've often described it in interviews, there might be someone out there who wants to be rich and famous, but for all their ego knows is when they become famous, they're going to get a stalker, and that's a threat to their survival. Or for all their ego knows is when they get rich, they're going to have distant family members coming out of the woodwork trying to take their home and their fortune from them. And it says it doesn't want any part of that. It doesn't realize that for the most part, when you achieve these things, you're actually safer and you've actually increased your probability of survival, because here's the funny thing about the ego. It can't project that level into the future, and yet simultaneously it is so savvy and so shrewd about leveraging its understanding and insight on your own fears and doubts and insecurities, which is why it finds a way of whispering in your ear like, listen, you've gone to the gym 6 days, you don't got to do a seventh day, you want to relax, or whatever it might be. It's going to whisper in your ear to keep you going, because it loves you. I mean, it's a misguided attempt. It thinks that it's keeping you safe in place, even though it's really keeping you stuck in place. It loves you, so of course you want to appreciate it. But the really cool thing is when you bypass it, like I said, by just finding methods that are quick and easy and so fun that it's much, much harder for it to talk you out of it, and then changes happen, you reach a certain level, a certain plateau, getting back to the mastery curve, where the ego can look around and be like, oh my God, my person's alive. I can now fight tooth and nail to protect this level of financial status and this level of relationship and this level of health. And then all of a sudden, you've got to keep going, bypassing to get higher, but at least it's protecting that new bottom line, that new basement for you. And that's a really cool thing, that you're not just spirit, you're also body and mind in this plane. And so we need to have insight in those aspects that are extensions of source, and the way those extensions function and how they serve or don't serve us based on what they do. And then when we have that insight, we understand, we can leverage that to our advantage, so that now the ego is on our team and fighting for us. Or if it's not, we're still bypassing it, accessing the subconscious mind, which is speaking to the universal mind, which is moving us forward and getting us where we need to go. So yeah, I'm huge on, again, giving people relief through the methods, but also huge on saying, like, what can you strategically do based on your insight about who you are and really the human condition, so that you are leaning in that direction of ease and joy and appreciation and gratitude and happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment, and just whatever quality it is in your life that you want to achieve and experience, because you can and you should. And that thing of people when they say, why isn't this working? That's like the same thing. That's like an I am statement. You're not using I am in that statement, but you're basically making a declarative statement about your experience and your reality. So you might as well be saying I am. When you're saying, why isn't this working? You're screaming, this isn't working, which is bringing it forward. For me, and I don't know if this is the best way because I'm just thinking this on the fly, the question is, I'm not noticing it working yet. What can I do to more easily invite it, since I know it's on the way anyway? As one example, although I'm sure there's better ways of phrasing it than that.
Yeah, I'll jump in again. Look, I don't want to hog everything, but that last point you were saying there is a lot of people. I came across somebody, not a quote, but a point that was made. There's a difference between trying and creating. Now, a lot of people will say, I'm trying to learn how to use a computer, or I'm trying to, create $1 million. I'm trying to do whatever, and they get again into this state of anxiety, anticipation anxiety, maybe we'll call it. Really a better mindset is to say, I'm creating the skills to know how to learn. I'm creating the skills to know how to use this computer. I'm creating the skills. I'm creating the atmosphere to allow my $1 million to come through. And when you look at that, then you look at your life as being a creation rather than a struggle. and
Mhm.
it becomes a game and becomes a lot less stressful, and the techniques you've got, the gratitude blitz, the 10 minutes ago, all these things, that those are great ways of diffusing this uh, this anxiety, letting the charge go, draining the charge, because that's what keeps a lot of people away from what they want, is that they have too much charge, and the charge often comes from ideas, very, very subtle and very, very convincing ideas that we seem to pick up over the years, which are kind of self-sabotaging, and sort of we're devaluing ourselves. We're discounting our worth, and we'll say things like, "Oh, I never get what I want," or "money doesn't grow on trees," and all these things, "no pain, no gain," and they all sound very, very convincing, and we take this baggage, and it causes a big dam, a big block in the flow of uh, well-being and worthiness that it should be our natural birthright. So again, as you were speaking, another book came to mind that I read many, many years ago. And it's by the guy who coined the term paradigm shift.
Mm.
Name was Thomas Kuhn, and he was looking at what's called the structure of scientific revolutions, and he made an analogy which is kind of useful. He said knowledge is a bit like a clearing in the forest. You've got a clearing where people are established, like a village, and you can farm in this clearing, and you can live your life and do whatever. You go into the forest and it's all scary and anomalous, and a lot of things you don't know. But when somebody comes along with a paradigm shift, it's like suddenly they clear another ring of trees and they open up another area, and then people feel safe to move into that area, and they start farming and they start living their lives in that area. And look, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but that's a little bit like we were talking about before with the ego, or the ego that's concerned with your survival. It's not going to want to move into those new areas, those new forested areas. It's not going to want to clear them, or start doing agriculture or living their lives there, because it's scary. It's unusual. It could be full of dangers, as you were saying, Andrew. Getting becoming incredibly rich might leave you open to lawsuits and stalkers or kidnappers or God knows what, and that's and so they say, look, it's better off just staying where we are. And so it's a bit of a not push and pull thing. It's a bit of a push and stay situation. We're going to push out. No, we're going to stay here. Okay, and it's really a matter of being able to convince the ego or assuage those fears, and then move out into those new areas. And of course we've got to move out, because that's what creation is. So coming back to what I was saying, it's better to say we're trying to clear this forest. Just say we're creating new spaces. We're creating things, not trying, we're creating. It's not a struggle, it's a joy.
Yeah. And it's interesting, and Jonathan, while you were talking, through in the chat, like, giving new meaning to that line that Yoda has, do or do not, there is no try. And it's interesting just with the words. There's one part of my book, I think it might be near where I put my stacking method, where I just put all these different examples of positive statements or affirmations, or however you might want to categorize them. And the reason I did all these different wordings is because words mean different things to different people, where one word might be constraining and that same word can be expansive to someone else. Like, for example, like you use the word create. Creating might be a tremendous thing for people, and then other people might want a different word. Like one word I like to use is it's like, I'm expanding the container for my wealth. And the reason I do that is, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with creating, by the way, because I think that's a wonderful word. For me, I like the idea that it already is created. It's already there. It's already big. So the expanding leaves me psychological cognitive space to allow money in right now, while at the same time always leaving that possibility of opening for even more money to come in. So I love that. Again, I love using creating in other contexts also, but I think it's really important for people to play with words and see which ones make them feel good, and really gets down to the heart of like what is really giving me that sense of relief, giving me that sense of confidence, relaxed expectation, appreciation, and gratitude. And I would invite people to, and by the way, there's no wrong way of doing this. Like, you'll know, like, if it doesn't feel bad, you're okay. Like, I would caution also people not to try to look for the perfect word. Listen, you say a word or you say a phrase, and as long as it doesn't feel bad, you're good. And then if it does maybe one day, well, then you look closer at it. But as long as it's not bothering you, you're in a good place. So I'd also remind people not to let their ego trick them into going down the rabbit hole of trying to find the perfect phrasing, because that's another trap. There's always traps. Even though I, in many ways, am a perfectionist, like the way I tackled putting my book together, I also recognize that, at least for me in my experience, you can't be a perfectionist when it comes to actually implementing and engaging in these processes or these methods, because you'll drive yourself crazy, because you are not perfect. So if you try to do it perfect, you're going to be an endless cycle of never getting it and never going where you want to go. And I'm instead of the proponent of like, listen, I'm doing it pretty well right now, and I recognize that I'm probably doing it better than I realize, and I'm also recognizing that I'm probably going to keep getting better and better at it in ways that sometimes I might notice and sometimes I might not notice. But it's in that attitude and that recognition that in the meantime, I can enjoy my life and things can keep coming for me. And strategically for me, that's been of huge benefit. So I would hope that would help other people.
Karen, did you hear what he just said? You can talk like that about your cooking.
Yes, I can. Thank you for the reminder. And I mean, even though that's not a huge area for me, but there's no area of life that we can't apply this to, and it will get better. Thank you for reminding me.
I'm seeing plenty of them. I think this is fascinating. So,
and Karen, I wonder, and I genuinely wonder this, by the way. I wonder if there's someone that was at that table that really enjoyed something that you made and it just didn't occur to them to express it to you.
Yeah, I bet that's true. I bet inside they were just praising and wanting the recipe, but too shy to ask.
Yeah,
I bet.
I wonder what it was that you made specifically, because you made a number of things that really hit the spot. And really, I wonder if there was a certain way that you'd created it, that it brought a flavor back to their mind, back to their childhood even, that, again, it would have been embarrassing for them to even bring up that story, or presumptuous for them. And like, what are these ways that you are already excellent in this facet of your life that you're not recognizing simply because you've not received an external information that's indicating so? I wonder.
That's a great open-ended statement, and we can do that with all areas. Cooking is not a huge thing for me. It's more of a funny thing because I don't do very much of it, and anyway, but still, I mean, it's important, like once a year or twice. But in other areas too, I mean, a person can apply that and just give oneself the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And when somebody maybe says something that we don't like, or maybe a criticism from a family member or something, say like that, then we can dwell on that, but instead dwell on this is sort of a cliche, but we dwell on what somebody complained about to us, but we don't dwell on a compliment. Okay, thanks, yeah, but. For some reason, and I want to be a vibrational match to dwelling on the good stuff. I want to put that out, and I want to get it back and enjoy it, and I want to have that virtuous circle of appreciation just going, because and Jonathan has shown, by the way, about appreciation. I think one time on here, we did this thing. Jonathan was just talking about, say, you could take anything at all. Like you could take a chair and you could just keep taking it level upon level upon level of appreciation. I am so thankful for whoever came up with the concept of a chair, because it's more comfortable than standing. And I'm so thankful for this chair because it has such and such and such. And I'm thankful for the whoever manufactured this thing. And I'm thankful for the truck driver who brought it to the store where I bought it. And it's just, and I think that we're getting into that tonight, where we're understanding that this can take us some really beautiful places, and it can take us deep, really deep. We can go so deep into appreciation, and at the same time, we're going very, very high vibrationally. And so, yeah, thanks for that, you guys. And I'm going to do that with Thanksgiving. Who knows, I might be starting me a restaurant or something.
Yeah.
It's going to turn out so darn good. Mark's like, no, please.
I wonder
please.
what that would look like.
Yeah, I wondered too.
10 minutes afterwards. Oh, this is fun.
10 minutes from now, hitting the publish button on a recipe book that you've put together. You never know.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That'll sell like hotcakes.
Yes.
No pun intended.
Exactly.
Concerning
And it
what
applies to so many things, like, you know, and again, obviously it's clear that you know, food isn't a sticking point, that it isn't something that you're driving yourself crazy over, but there's people that, you know, they might be at their work or their jobs and they think nobody likes them. And it's like, how do you know that? Like, what are the people that just would feel weird and awkward complimenting you on the many qualities? And I'm saying this to anyone listening out there. It's like, you know, that you really change them. It's like, and by the way, it's like, well, I'm too quirky. Like, maybe it's your quirkiness that makes people feel a little bit more comfortable in their skin. And maybe it's your lack of irony. And it's like, they don't feel out of place. But who's going to say that? Who's going to like stop you in the middle of the office, be like, listen, I just want to know that the way you are makes me feel better about who I am. It's an awkward thing for someone to say, unless they're weird like me and they always like compliment people about stuff no matter what, because they don't care how they look. But I'm like, you know, for most parts, like, you never know. And there's so many things that you never know about. And also, like, the complaints and criticism that we receive, I can't say that none of them are personal, but a lot more of them are not personal than we realize. And a lot of them are just projections, and people are off their own thing. And I mean, that doesn't make it okay, but it does make it okay in the sense that you don't have to carry the burden of the criticism. It doesn't have to say something about you. And those aren't just words. It's like, it's legitimate. Like, people have got their own stuff going on. I can tell you, there were times, because you can probably tell, I'm very like, I have tunnel vision, and I'm very like get things done type of person. And I know there were times where I inadvertently hurt people's feelings in jobs. And it wasn't by yelling at them. It wasn't by making fun of them. It was just by like writing an email where I just said 2 sentences rather than like a long thing, like explaining my feelings, like just getting to the point. Like, there are things that you will do in a way of being that you're just going to, you're going to upset people without even intending to. And by that same token, people will upset you without that being their intention. And it's part of life. It's part of being in the soup of where we are. It's part of interpreting things and assigning meaning. And it's also part of a thing where, again, taking this back to vibration and taking this back to the law of attraction, where if you are not consistently strategically engaging in a place where you are appreciating yourself and you are appreciating your circumstances, you are leaving yourself open to vibrationally attract these excuses or these reasons to feel bad about yourself, where instead you can be like, listen, I'm going to start doing this thing every single day, 5 minutes of whatever gratitude or scripting or visualization, or whatever, knowing that the cool thing about that is you will actually be bypassing and missing negative things, but you'll never know it because you bypassed it. How many negative experiences have we not experienced because we were engaging in this work? We will never know because we can't know because we never encountered it. And it's really important to think about. Like, anyone listening, just because, like, if you're saying, hey, this stuff isn't working, oh my God, you have no idea what grief you have saved yourself in this endeavor with the pre-dramatic manifestation, just by being willing to engage in these processes and being appreciative and grateful and leaning in that direction.
That's such a
Okay, Sue, go ahead, please. So
That's such a great turnaround for, I think, all of us to imagine, or not really have to go down there, but just think, well, what might I have created that I didn't want had I not been making this effort. So I love that you said that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like, getting back to Johari window, even though it's not exact, unconscious incompetence, or another way of saying you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know, but you can be rest assured that the universe is conspiring in your favor, especially when you lean in that direction. So of course you've bypassed some negative experiences that you'll never have to worry about because you were more intentional about it.
Just a couple of things as this comes up. Look, it comes back to what Abraham Hicks says, every yeah, the cat goes meow. Okay, look, everything is always working out for me, and people will look at it and say, well, look, I've lost my job, or I've got this health problem, or I don't have this money, or whatever it is. How is that everything working out for me? But you don't know. Maybe you lose that job and you can get a better job, or you're getting rid of you're getting out of a toxic work environment, or whatever it is, or all these things. So you don't know. Getting stuck in traffic could be that the red light comes up, goes, and you're delayed, but you miss a big pile up on the freeway. Who knows what it is? And so you got to have this attitude of, yeah, look, it is always working out for me. And when things come up, it's as we're talking about before. Look, we didn't use this word, but Abraham Hicks uses the word rendezvousing a fair bit. And look, if something's in your life, if you come across something, you're rendezvousing with it. And as you were saying, Andrew, it's in your vibration. It's there. You wouldn't rendezvous with it if it wasn't there, in your vibration. And so when something happens, somebody, I don't know, yells at me for cutting them off in traffic, or whatever it is. If I try not to do that, of course, but I say, well, thanks for the update. You're updating me as to where my vibration is at the moment. It's not, as you were saying, Andrew, it's not about, it's not about me, it's about them in a way. It's they're projecting what they've got, but it's reflecting back to me what's going on in my vibration. So in that sense, it's a matter of understanding that Abraham Hicks says, the world's not coming to you. It's not happening to you. It's coming from you. Everything, all your experience is not happening to you. Your experience is happening from you. You are creating your own creation. You are creating your life, and those things that you see are a reflection of what you have. And another point we're talking about, it's really, really important to use the right words, or choose the correct phrases, choose the correct words, choose the correct strategies that you're going to put in place, make the right choices. And look, there's something that because okay, I'll backpedal a bit. In your book, Andrew, you're talking about gratitude blitz, and a lot of Abraham Hicksters, the purists, are going to say, "Oh no, gratitude's not the right word. You got to be appreciation." And look, if it works, it works. If it works for you, whatever works for you, as Jonathan keeps saying, it's okay. And then maybe later on you can choose the word appreciation blitz if that's what you want. But as long as you've got the intent, it's the intent of the word that happened that's the important thing. And when we use words, when we choose words, it's kind of like a mindset. Now, I forget who said it. They said, you can't think of something that you don't have a word for. And yeah, that's true. I could say, yeah, but I can think of it, but I can't tell you. That's not possible. But we're coming back. the point you were talking about earlier on today, Andrew, about appreciation and saying grace, appreciating food. Now there's I lived in Japan for a while, and they have a word that they say over there, which is before they eat something, they don't pray, but they'll just take a little time and they'll say itadakimasu, which means I'm grateful for what I'm going to see. I'm gratefully receiving, I suppose we might say. And somebody asked me that, what are these people saying? Itadakimasu. What are they saying all the time? And I had to think, and then I thought, well, maybe in English we'd say bon appetit, but bon appetit is not an English word.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that. We don't have a word for that specifically. I mean, we've borrowed it from other languages. We kind of get the idea. So as you change your language, as you change your way of expressing yourself, you start to build up these new mental constructs and put in place these strategies to choose better things for yourself, to start to rendezvous with better things.
Yes.
And so it's very, that's why it's very good. As I was talking about before, the image of the clearing of the forest. You've got to go. The guy Neil Donald Walsh, who does Conversation with God, his quote is, "Life begins at the edge of your comfort zone." So it's not that you don't have to go outside your comfort. You don't have to go too far, but at the edge of your comfort zone. That's where the actions happen. That's where you're going to make your progress. So that you start there and you start to entertain these new ideas, these new perspectives, and then you can start to bypass the survival ego if need be, but you can start to put in place the strategies. And as your book gives us a whole list of strategies that we can put in place, and Abraham Hicks, asking it is given has a whole lot of strategies too. Whatever works for you, as Jonathan was saying. So we can start to do that, and we can start to expand the edge of our comfort zone. That's that's creation. That's how we live our lives. We didn't, as I say, we didn't come here to sit on an armchair and and do nothing all day. People will say, if law of attraction means that thoughts create things, you can just think good thoughts and things will happen. Why don't you just sit in your armchair and just think good thoughts and $1 million will land in your lap? And that might be possible if you had an incredible level of belief, if you had incredible faith, incredible expectation that was going to happen. But what's the point of doing that? What's the point of just sitting around doing nothing? We've come here to create. So Andrew, you've created your book and you've done it really consistently, and you had your tunnel vision and you're really focused in on that, and that's what people want to do. They want to find purpose. It's finding the purpose. Not that there's something that you must do that's preordained, and you have to live your life like this and you have to achieve these things, but we've all got a set of skills and a set of propensities, a set of capabilities, and if we're not using those, if we're not creating, that's when people start to get depressed, and that's when people start getting anxious and worried and things like that. So it's a matter of training ourselves. Little simple techniques. A technique I saw once on TV. These people were the psychologist was dealing with people with anxiety and depression, and the biggest thing they found was dancing. People just going out dancing, that would relieve the stress. But the psychologist got them to get little stickers, little orange stickers or something, and just stick them around the place. And every time they saw it, they say, "Oh wow, yeah, I life's good," or I've got something to appreciate. Like you were talking about before, the Halloween thing, or the merriment. I forget your word.
Pumpkin season method. Yep.
Pumpkin season. That's the one. Yeah, we don't have that here. We don't have pumpkin season. We don't have Halloween. But it's those little reminders, and we get back into that pattern. We start to build that momentum, and that's what Abraham Hicks is always talking about, building momentum. So it's really important, and that way we can start to expand our view of the world.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned a number of things actually, but you're talking about, like, you gave the example of you cutting someone off and them kind of screaming at you, and you also talk about, like, people, with purpose, and a lot of this stuff is connected in ways that we don't realize. Well, first of all, we all have even, like, maybe your purpose is to be an author or to play guitar, this and that, but there's a higher purpose, and everyone's on it whether they realize it or not. And one part is to cooperatively serve each other and be there for each other, just as you're letting people be there for you. And what I mean by that is, when you cut that person off and they start screaming at you, what might have happened was you cutting them off prevented them from going too fast, where a mile down the road they would have gotten T-boned. So you actually saved them from that. And they, for you, screamed at you because at that point you needed one more reminder that the opinions of others does not serve as your validation, and you're not going to let that bother you. So that could have been the thing that you needed before going into another conversation where it was really important to be shored up. In other words, we might be serving people, each other, in ways that we don't realize through our cooperation, through our vibration, through what we're attracting. And, I remember over the summer, because I take a lot of walks from my neighborhood. I was taking a walk and I took a different path than I usually take. And while I was walking, I saw like this orb or this sphere kind of like whiz by and fall. And I look over across the street, and it was like a young boy and his grandfather. They lost the ball they were playing with, and they were looking for it. And I quickly called him, like, "Hey, I think this is what you're looking for." And like, "All right, thank you." And it raises questions that, because is this a situation where this man sees his grandson every single week? Or is this a situation where they see each other like once a year? In other words, did I, without realizing, perform a really valuable service by being there to give them the ball so they can keep playing, rather than wasting the final hour that they had together for at least another year searching for the ball? Like, I viewed it as a possibility where by finding the ball, being there at that time and giving to them, they got that quality time together, versus what would have been a way more negative experience with maybe possibly fleeting opportunity, depending on the relationship and depending on the dynamic. A week later, I'm walking around and I see this person, and you can tell that his back's in really bad shape. And there were like 10 different, I don't want to say logs, but like sticks that he had to pick up. I picked them up for him in like 20 seconds. And I did for him in 20 seconds what would have been literally, and I've had back pain before, so I understand, it would have been a half hour of really intense discomfort and really intense pain, which I accomplished in 20 seconds. We serve each other. And by the way, that made me feel good, so I was served also. So we serve each other in the regular, ordinary ongoings of life. And when we carry that attitude of, they say just be nice and be good to people, it's because when you're doing that, you will find opportunities to help people that really need it, but you'll also be helping yourself and raising your vibration, which will be inviting more things for you. I mean, I know that I don't go out of my way. I don't think I need to go out of my way to find people to help, but I do know that when an opportunity of clients comes in front of me and I actually do it, I am selfishly engaging in that, helping that person, being selfless, knowing that selfishly that is raising my vibration and it's bringing good things to me. And you know what? That's okay. Because through that selfishness and that attitude, I am contributing to that person. I'm contributing to the world overall. I wish we were all selfish in trying to make sure to be there for everyone, knowing that good things would come, because then more good things would come for everyone. More people would be taken care of. And again, we all have this higher purpose. Anyone right now that might be battling with depression or battling with frustration or battling with feeling closed in, I'm not saying go out and make it your mission to change the world. I mean, you can if you want to, but I would say if you leave yourself open to an opportunity where you might help someone else, it might really lift you up and make you feel good. And you might make a really good friend who might be able to help you with whatever you're going through. You never know. But we are attracting these good things. And strategically, when we're leaning in a good direction, we're attracting better things, better circumstances, better opportunities, better rendezvous, better experiences, and a better life.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I'm sorry to keep jumping in, but this is, again, getting back to what I was talking about before with this virtuous circle, this virtuous cycle, and as you say, Andrew, we don't know. there's again another quote from Neil Donald Walsh. He says, you know, if you're not happy with your life, if you want something in your life, be the source. So if you're not, you know, if you don't have enough love in your life, then be the source of love for somebody. Go visit your grandmother, or you know, pet a dog or something like that. You know, give them some love, and then that brings it to you, because every energy that you express runs through you. So if you're pushing against something, then you're first of all running that energy through yourself. Okay, if you're going to be the source of condemnation or anger or judgment or whatever, that energy first of all has to run through yourself before. Mark Twain said something like, anger is an acid which causes more harm to the vessel that contains it than the object it's poured on, and something like that. So you know, we've got to get away from this sloppy thinking, these sloppy habits, and be very, very careful about what we choose. You know, and you know, it's very hard to choose the right sort of thoughts, because thoughts arise spontaneously, but you can always choose the right sort of feeling. Okay, and you can always, you know, the 10 minutes ago exercise we mentioned before, you can feel. Let's go back and just, or not go back, but imagine what it feels like 10 minutes after you get that job. You know, you're going for the interview. Imagine what it feels like. You know, you're not going to be imagining what your thoughts are going to be, because thoughts are very, very unpredictable, very, very hard to control. But you can always tap into the feeling of that. And yeah, so when we are the source or whatever it is, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. When we make those choices, when we know what most people know what they want. Most people know the feeling or what they want. They want happiness, they want satisfaction, they want connection, they want all these sorts of things. And so when you can start to choose that for yourself, and choose that feeling, then it will just overflow into the world. And another guy people might have heard of, a guy called Alan Watts, who was writing about Buddhism and things like that back in the 50s. He said, I'm paraphrasing here, it's a little bit like, I'm paraphrasing the idea, the ultimate form of hedonism is altruism, meaning that if you take care of people around you, if you make a better social environment for yourself, if you connect to people more and give to them, then of course you're going to make a better environment for yourself. So that's going to be the best way to you know, create some happiness for yourself. If you're going around creating an environment, you know, a vicious circle where you're condemning people, judging people, you know, pushing against people, that's going to be the environment that you create. But if you go out, help your neighbor find a ball, or you know, pick up some sticks or whatever it is, you know, that's going to be the environment that you create for yourself. And so, you know, ultimately doing service for others is the best service for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a caveat in there where, at least from my perspective, you want to be helpful, but never to your own detriment, never to a place where you're feeling bad. Like, for example, if there's someone in my life who I know is unreliable and they want to borrow my car, like, no, because I don't trust you, and it's just going to create. Now, what I will do, well, I mean, if possible, if you need a ride specifically somewhere and I can do it, I'll do that. But like, in other words, I always say, like, you know, to whatever measure we can. And I'm not saying that you didn't say this, but just as a reminder for people, like, you know, when you're serving others, please don't do it to a point where you're regretting it or you're depleting yourself, because like that old cliche of, like, you know, the airplane and the mask dropping down, got to put your mask on first. Otherwise, you're no good to anyone else anyway. So when your mask is on, then you can go and put all the other masks on other people. But at first, and Sue, it looks like you had a thought about that.
Well,
Yeah,
because
that's
you
sorry.
used one of my most puzzling words, selfish. Because is putting your mask on first being selfish? Is doing things for others because you also feel good? Is that being selfish, or is that just creating a better world? I think we need to redefine that word somehow. I don't know
Mm.
what the root word is and all that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think everyone needs to bring their own meaning to it in a way that's going to work for them. In other words, the whole thing with the mask, certain people will from externally will view it as selfish in a bad way. And other people like, well, it's necessarily selfish. And other people like, no, it's not selfish, it's strategic. So everyone has their own attachments and meanings to it. I'm of the mind that, whatever words we use, let's make sure that the intentions and energy behind it are in high service to ourselves, to the point where that we can then be of useful service to others as well, contributing to a better world around us. But that's not a law of attraction thing. That's just my own personal perspective and experience.
Yeah, I think a
If we
quote.
all get in here, right,
Go
I
ahead.
have it up and I'm not usually rude, but I'm just going to, I can't remember the law of attraction book it was in, or the writer, but one thing just came when there was going on about being selfish, your own well-being first and everything. And something that stuck in my mind was, there is nothing truly as a selfless act. You help someone, a selfless act, but you end up feeling good from it. That's just a quick example. And when I read that, there is no thing really such as a selfless act. You do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because it makes you feel good. You just like to be helpful. But, it's just something I read. Okay, shutting up now.
Can I just jump in before you respond, Andrew? Just with a quote from Abraham Hicks. And I just read it this morning for me. It's morning here, where they say, you can't get sick enough to help sick people. You can't get poor enough to help poor people. The only way you can actually make a change in the world is to take care of yourself. Again, that's not quite exactly right, but you've got to put yourself first and look after your own well-being before you can come from a position where you are able to be of service to other people. Yeah. And again, it becomes difficult because again, I'll use a quote from Sarah Landon, the other woman who channels some things. She says, when you, I'll try to get the quote mostly right. When you try to create in another's reality, you end up creating your own misery. So there's one way of putting it is you can't save people from themselves. So there's a boundary. It's not a wall. It's a boundary. So boundaries have gates, boundaries have doors. So you can actually go through and you can help those people. But if they are not, if your friend's using the car, your unreliable friend wants to use your car, then yeah, you've got to set that boundary, and you can have that gate, you can have that little access where you can say, yeah, I'll if it's convenient for me, I'll drop you off somewhere. But you can't just be open to everything, because that's another recipe for disaster. And it's a matter of allowing people to walk their own path. And if you happen to coincide, if your path happens to go down the same direction and you can be of assistance or at least be an example to them, then great. Otherwise they've got to walk their own path.
Yeah. And the key is like all this, there's no perfection, all this, meaning you might hit the sweet spot of how helpful you could be to someone, and then an old pattern might come up and you'll do something to your own detriment. And I would say the number one thing is understand that whether it's this whole question of selfish or selfless, this whole question of serving others, this whole question of doing law of attraction methods or processes or whatever it might be, knowing that you might hit a sweet spot, you might hit a flow, and then you might kind of go off balance. The number one thing with that understanding is to be forgiving and patient of yourself and be like, listen, all right, this isn't the first misstep. It probably won't be the last, but in my recognition that it's okay, it's helping facilitate a much faster return to where I want to be on whatever level of whatever it is. So I would caution everyone, like, listen, there's not going to be any perfection in this, and we don't want to. And one of the best skills, on the assumption that you are being genuine and you don't want to genuinely hurt anyone else, and you never do something intentionally hurt other people, with that understanding, one of the best skills that you can come up with and that you can cultivate in your life is to be forgiving of yourself and patient with yourself. Because when you do that, you ironically open the floodgates for things to move along a lot better and a lot faster for yourself, and a lot more room to actually love and appreciate yourself. So you gotta understand that you're not going to be perfect at any of this, and it's okay. It's just the way it goes. But in that recognition that it's okay, you are literally strategically putting yourself on track in a much faster, more efficient, more enjoyable, more success-driven way, basically.
Yeah, that's great. I'll just come in with another thought here. Look, success is really measured in lots of different ways. I have a friend who never wants to have kids because he says his father was an accountant, so he's very, very focused on money. And he says, "Oh, look, why would anybody want to have kids? It's just a financial drain for 20 years or something like that." And that's true in a sense, you know. the little buggers just keep on draining the money from you. But you know, there's a lot more from it. You know, you get a lot more. You know, there's the pleasure of being with them, and also it's a natural thing. You know, people are naturally hardwired to have kids, and also you know, it's a matter of giving. You know, so when people give something and give it selflessly, then you're not expecting a return, and it's just the action, the act of giving, which is the reward in itself. So you know, success, like I say, can be measured in lots of different ways, and it's not so much success as satisfaction or what you're creating. You know, so
Yeah.
you know, for me, creating a happy family life is a great thing, you know, and I'm not really worried too much about how much my bank balance is going down. And you know, I can see my kids are happy, and you know, there's a happy house here, and all those things. You know, it's you don't just look at it in terms of dollars and cents in a lot of ways, and you don't just look at it in terms of, you know, whatever enlightenment or you know, ignorance or whatever it is. There is no perfection, as you're saying, Andrew, and there's, you know, but it's perfectly imperfect. You know, you can't get it wrong. You never get it done. You can't get it wrong, as they say. So yeah, it's a matter of finding, you know, some enjoyment, some pleasure, some satisfaction in the moment, and you know, and not worrying too much what other people, the measures of other people. You know.
Yeah, everyone's gonna different strokes for different folks. Everyone's gonna have their own standards for what makes for a happy life, and I would simply advise people, again, with the understanding that you're not trying to intentionally harm anybody else. There's nothing that's off limits. There's nothing you should feel bad about wanting or pursuing. Go for it, because you
Right.
know you're here for a reason.
That's right. I agree. And I guess one thing that I've learned so much from the teachings of Abraham and all of law of attraction is that variety is the spice of life. And we are here in a very varied environment. And that has such a great purpose because of the contrast it provides and just the variety. There's something that everybody's going to like and everybody's not going to like and all that. And I was just thinking of that fellow you mentioned, Brent. You know, for him, that is so right. That idea for him, I mean, that wouldn't work for many of us because we are like more family oriented. But and I know of any number of people who aren't a bit family oriented. And I know more and more as time goes on, I can look at other people whose goals and values are different, really different from mine, and still say, hey, and I'm going back to Jonathan, it works for them, whatever works. And I mean, there are literally people like, and my dad was kind of that sort, actually, as I understand, who really didn't want kids. I'm an only child. I kind of got through somehow, but and he was always worried about money. And but but that was his perspective. And so there's again, I mean, and as we've talked about tonight, there is no wrong perspective. There is only what a person has, and they have that because of the life experiences that they've lived. And I catch myself, because I have this really close friend. We grew up together. And Mark puts up with our phone conversations, which tend to go on and on every week. But anyway, she's never been married, and she is a retired home ec teacher. And but we talk, and we have so many connections, but she's a really good cook. She's a really, really good cook. But anywho, it's just like, so often I just want to say, don't you want to blah, blah, blah? Don't you want to get on a dating app? Don't you want to do such and such? To add to your income. And I think if I were in her shoes, I would be doing da 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 da. And I draw myself up short. I bet every week I draw myself up short when I start to think that. And then I just wash that away, because I know that she's living the life that she's not asked for my advice, and she's living the life that she has chosen. And anyway, that's just a kind of just a sideline there. But this is one way that I feel like I've really broadened myself, and in a place where I go into negativity far, far less than I used to, where I was so egocentric that, people that weren't doing things the way I would do them. And I really, that's been one of the countless benefits of doing this kind of work, is for me, that's just one more area that I don't see things like I used to. So thank you for triggering that in me, Brent. I didn't mean to say that anybody was thinking wrong here, but it's, anyway, it's just our horizons broaden and our minds open more. And then we feel more loving. And when we feel more loving and accepting, then we're going to rendezvous with people that will enjoy helping. So, and I love that discussion. Go ahead, Sue.
And just piggybacking off that, it's amazing for me to look at people who I think are very similar to me and realize how our life experience is so different, what we really think deep inside, whatever woundedness or whatever we might have had from our childhood, what solutions we find in our life. The variables are endless. Plus, we're in this place of designing our life rather than letting the outside world tell us who we are. And that's, to me, that's been a life-changing difference, to see people who just get, bashed around by whatever's going on, and not choosing not to be part of that mentality.
A really interesting thing is you can look at people that you really care about, and don't be too harsh on yourself, but you can judge and assess, like, wow, look at that lack of awareness. And like, oftentimes, like, usually I don't do this, but sometimes I try to be like, okay, wow, if I can detect that, like, glaringly obvious lack of awareness, I wonder what I'm not aware of. And it becomes like a whole rabbit hole there, because again, you don't know what you don't know. But then I also have gratitude, because again, not to be judgmental, I will see people that, to put it in a condescending way, they should know better, at least in my humble opinion, but they don't. And it's not my decision for them. It's not my place to tell them, but it's like, And it makes me wonder, like, what am I unaware of that someone else is like, I'm not going to tell him. He wouldn't listen anyway, even though I would. But it's such a funny thing.
And either wouldn't listen, or it's like when you were saying, if we've never heard of the concept, we can't see it.
Mhm.
The Native Americans couldn't see the ships coming to shore because they'd never had a concept of a ship. So where was I going with that? So looking at someone else and trying to explain to them what we think they should be doing, it's a different language.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
know that because I've tried a number of times.
Yeah,
Haven't we
that
all?
comes back to what I was sorry to jump in, Karen, but it comes back to what I was saying before. Look, you can't think of a word, can't think of something you don't have a word for. And when you study another language, you look at another language, you can they look at the world differently, and we can't judge that that's right or wrong. For example, I was looking at Spanish the other day, or just recently, and there's a word, sobremesa, which means to continue the conversation long after the meal is finished, something like that. And that shows how they weight their world. That shows how they rate these things as important. A lot of Mediterranean cultures there, like I think it wasn't Spain, but in Italy, I think they started the slow food movement, as opposed to fast food. Rather than having fast food and going off and getting a burger and eating it in 10 minutes or something, they sit down and talk and have a big long table with all the friends and family and neighbors and discuss things. And so that's what they rate as being important. Getting back to the quote I said before from Sarah Landon, when you try to create in another's reality, you only create your own misery. And that's often the case. If we're there, we're saying, you ought to be doing this. Karen saying, well, your friend should go on a dating app or whatever it is, and it's not really, we don't know. She might be happy doing something else. She might have other outlets. Okay, it's a difficult situation when you've got people like. A little girl here. When you've got responsibility for somebody, then yeah, you've got to make choices for them. Now, I do a lot of work in schools. I'm a relief teacher. I know in England they say supply teacher. You say relief teacher over there in the States? I don't know.
Maybe substitute
Anyway,
teacher?
I come in. Sorry?
Substitute teacher, maybe?
Substitute. That's what you say. That's right. Yeah, we call it relief. Relieving. We're relieving the other teacher. So I've got to come in, and it's challenging, as you can guess, and I've got to make choices for these ratty 12-year-olds, and I've got to be, there's a great quote again from Neil Donald Walsh. I think sometimes to be a man of peace, you've got to go to war, and sometimes I'd like to be nice and peaceful and happy and get along well with them, but sometimes you've got to make choices for them, and that's a kind of fine line. But by and large, for adults, you let them do what they do, and if they want to learn from your example, great. Or if they come to you for help, great. Or very obviously, if somebody was, I don't know, dangling from a rope off the side of the cliff, I wouldn't say, oh, well, you're an adult, you put yourself in that. Of course I'd go help them, yeah, or whatever. But by and large, I'm not going to try and create in their reality, and that's a big lesson, because as I was saying before, we get these constructs, these mental images, these phrases that we pick up over our lifetime, and we should do that. They should be like this. Everybody should be, and should is a very dangerous word. In fact, you should not say should. The thing is that people will again, another quote from William Blake. He said the fool would become wise if he would persist in his folly. And we can't know. You've got to love your own life. You've got to love what's happened to you. You can't love yourself while rejecting everything that shaped you. So that's a big thing, a big lesson in life for me. And so, coming back to your book, Andrew, it's we're talking about the ego or the survival ego or whatever it is, and all these strategies and these techniques that you've got, that helps us overcome these barriers that we've built up over lifetime. It's I mean, in my view anyway, that's what I would say. A lot of it is all about unlearning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, the goal is just to give people enough momentum, or not to let them give themselves momentum, to give people the opportunity or the excuse they were looking for to just do this one more time, this time get that momentum. And again, you notice, like, I don't call it the last law of attraction book you'll ever read, although it's possible. I call it the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, because again, the whole goal is that one last book that finally gets you that one last piece over the top, where it's now experiential in your life and no one can ever take it away from you. And even when you were talking about, we were talking about, people and where they come into play, it's more external circumstances, right? Whether it's an actual person or it's an event or it's, a rendezvous, whatever it might be, it all comes down to, well, what can we do where we are attracting the circumstances and the people and the situations and the scenarios and the results and the manifestations that we really want? Let's be strategic and let's lean in, whether you call it a method or a process. Pick something that's fun, pick something that's easy, pick something that's convenient, pick something that's user-friendly, and pick something that you literally can be consistent with, that it doesn't feel like a chore, it feels like a choice. It isn't something that you have to do, it's something that you get to do. It's a privilege. And once you look at it in that way, you are on your way. And that's, the goal, at least, for my book, the way I'm trying to deliver it, and just the stuff I do on my YouTube channel. And just like anytime I have these conversations, I try to keep it very basic, very simple. If I talk about something like a Johari window, which I've never spoken about before in an interview like this, it's with the preface of, well, that's just a fun little anecdote. But in the end, this just comes down to feeling good while thinking about what you have or what you want, or both. And we can talk about, the mastery curve. We could do this, we could do that. None of this is in my book, by the way, but just it's coming up in conversation. But it all comes down to, all right, well, how do you feel good for just a few minutes a day, knowing that in and of itself will build on itself, and then you'll feel good for more than just a few minutes a day, but you won't have to have so much pressure on yourself. It won't be an obligation. It won't be something where you're always looking over your shoulder. It won't be a situation where you're judging yourself or you're angry at yourself. And instead, like, listen, this ain't perfect, but it's pretty good and it's getting better every single day, mostly because I have a recognition that it's getting better every single day. And I'm willing to embrace the idea, and I'm willing to embrace the reality that it is getting better every single day. And whoa, look at this, it's getting better every single day. How about that? And that's really the ultimate motivation. Saying all that, Karen, was there anything that, I know we didn't have any attachments over how this is supposed to go, but was there anything that you were looking forward to talking about or bringing up that you hadn't touched on?
Yes. Perfect. We've got about, I could probably keep the recording going for about another 8 minutes before it gets over that magical number of being too big. And here's what I'd like you to do, because I'm really, really curious. There's so many people that have wanted to write books or have written books. Could you give us the history of your book? Meaning X number of years ago, you had an idea and you thought about it for this long, or how did you get from, and when was it, and what was the original thought of the book, and how the heck did you get to 80,000 sold?
Yeah.
Okay, just that review of that whole process to inspire other people, especially, well, I want to know, because I'm curious about the details, your thoughts, your feelings. How do you feel about, and then, let us know also, how does it feel to have 80,000 of these things out there? Go ahead.
That's very surreal, that part. So let's see if I can do this in 8 minutes, because I could probably talk for an hour just on that alone. But I want to, this actually good. This will challenge me to give some nice condensed value here. So thank you for that question. So without going into the long and short of it right now, like, my situation where I learned about law of attraction in 2004, I struggled for 4 years. 2008, some bad stuff really goes down, and I finally get myself back into a corner where I give myself permission, or I have to, whatever, I actually do these methods long enough where things happen. And we're talking about a massive improvement that happened 2 weeks in, another one that happened 3 months in, 4 months in, 6 months in. Like, I had this massive thing, which I talk about. People go to gravitythecosmos.com if they want to check that out. But because you were asking about the book, because that happens in 2008. It isn't until 2019 that I finally decide to write this thing. And between 2008 and 2019, I'm taking what I know about the law of attraction in life, and I'm going about my life, and I'm doing my thing, and I'm continuing to experiment, and I'm continuing to have, more ups and downs, but just going through everything, and glad I know this. And I'm writing, and I'm being a copywriter, and I'm basically working this muscle in my brain. And it just came to a place, Mark, where I got, I guess, restless in life. And it's like, listen, I want to do something new in my business that I'd never done before. And it sounds kind of silly, but like, what can I do where, putting it candidly, I'm not going to be bored or impatient if a customer writes to me with a question? What category or one thing about my life am I excited to talk about that I've never talked about before? Like, well, law of attraction. Like, I've never really publicly gone in that, but obviously that's such a core part of my life. So then I basically had to give myself permission. And I don't know what clicked or why I clicked. I mean, I guess I just built up where I was just ready internally there. I gave myself permission to write this book with this ambitious title, because we know there aren't hundreds of law of attraction books out there. There's like 1,000. And it's my belief, in my opinion, that if you're going to write a book, you don't want it to be another book. You want to add something new or different to the conversation. You want to shift paradigms. You want to give people something they've never seen before. That's at least the goal. And so I set out to say, okay, every law of attraction book worth its salt is going to explain the law of attraction. Every law of attraction book worth its salt is going to give you user-friendly methods. Cool, I did that. Let me also hold the mirror up to the reader and explain what's going on with them internally, so to answer why they start to do this, why they get results, and why they stop, so that they can stop stopping. So that was the philosophy behind it. In terms of the writing process, everyone's different, but I knew that I can't spit out perfection on a first draft, but what I could do is I can just throw the ideas out on a computer screen, and once they're there in front of me, I can massage them. So I just typed out whatever and put down my ideas, my concepts. And then I went to work, and I leaned on my prior experience as a copywriter. I leaned on my prior experience, just working my brain in that motion, my prior experience of teaching people and always trying to make things click. And I use those parts of my brain and my insight and my experience in the law of attraction to structure a delivery and combination of words that will hopefully unfold. And I know that's just saying that's easier said than done. Some people have a knack for it and some people don't. And the people that don't, they can still do it. It's just going to be more heavy lifting and more skull sweat, as they say, where they just got to lean in. But basically, I spit out the ideas and I massaged it. Now, in terms of how this gets to 80,000 copies and counting, very surreal, very amazing to think about. But I will say this: everything comes from intention, and every decision I make, and I mean this, it's with the genuine intention that when people go to this content, whether it's the book or they're not spending any money and they're going to the YouTube channel, when people get to my version or my delivery of this understanding, that they really are going to be changed, and everything's built from that. And when you build everything from that, things happen. So for example, you get my book. The book in and of itself is meant to give you everything, but I'm like, listen, I recognize that the ego's still there. So here's what you got. Here's a whole chapter telling you about all these book bonuses I've made for you. They're free. You give me your email address, I'm going to send them to you. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to email you daily stuff for maybe 50 or 60 days, that it's just designed to help you. But by that same token, if you have a question and you email me, where there's this stigma that most authors are too good or too busy to do that, I'm going to reply back. So I've installed this system of service and help and benefit that's really there for people. But when you do that, and this goes for any profession or any endeavor, well, I know psychologically, well, someone's going to be more likely to recommend this book to a friend because they know that if their friend gets the book and their friend emails me, I'm going to write back to the friend also. They know that if they recommend the book, that their friend's going to and gets the bonuses, they're going to get all the support from me. And therefore, you know, they get the stuff they feel, I would imagine, and this is the assumption, the hopeful assumption that the book is actually good. Well, then they're going to feel better about leaving a review on Amazon or leaving a review on Audible. I think when you serve people and it's clear to them that it's not a trick, that you're actually trying to serve them, it's going to be way easier for them to say, you know what, I will take 30 seconds out of my life and I will review this book and I will let people know what I think about it. And then new people come there. Now, this is all the like three-dimensional stuff. Obviously, the another element is the intentionality and the law of attraction, because I put out the intention and I put out the visualization, I put out the scripting, and all the methods I did were with the understanding of this book, not even selling a specific number of copies, because actually I want to sell 1 million and then some, but with the understanding that the book would reach people and would connect with people and would serve people and help people. That was my intention from the very beginning. So that carries me through in decisions that I make without even consciously realizing I'm making those decisions. And I know we're winding down on the clock, so that's in a very abbreviated version, but it really comes down to going on inspired action, having intention, and literally trying to serve, which I think lends itself to a momentum and an energy where more people will hear about the book. And again, hopefully, ideally, the book itself is a high quality that people actually get a pleasurable, useful experience out of it.
Kind of interesting, because as you were talking, I was thinking of a couple of things that I've read about Rhonda Byrne, and when she wrote and produced The Secret, and she had this, as Abe puts it, she had this just intent that it was going to be great, and it was going to be big, and it was going to be wonderful, and it was whatever, and she used these principles to get The Secret, the movie and the book out in an amazing way. One last question.
Hmm?
When you were writing the book, were you channeling? Do you
Yes and
consider
no.
it channeling?
Yes, and so here's what I mean by that. I wasn't channeling the way Esther channels. I wasn't hearing, and I'm making an assumption about what her experience is, best based on what I've seen. I wasn't like hearing voices in stereo, but I think we all we all channel. I think there was certainly a higher self connection to me of source, whether it was one personality or multiple, coming through and not just sharing the ideas, but helping me move the ideas around in order. I think we're all channeling, and I think when you're in the flow, you're channeling. So I was channeling on some subconscious level, but certainly not on a level that it's noticed the way Esther clearly consciously notices as she's channeling. I was just doing my thing, but I certainly believe there was a higher intelligence that was guiding me through and helping me along.
Got it. Everybody, I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to leave Facebook Live on.
Oh, just a second, hon. I just wondered if Mona might have anything that she wanted to ask Andrew, or any comments. If Mona's still there, and she is. Hi.
Hi. No, you know what? This is my first webinar like this, or Zoom call. I know you from your memes. I probably commented on a few of them, and I really like your sense of humor, and I always share them. And so I really loved it. This is some great information. And for me, it's stuff that but it's things like this are really nice, because you have to remind, for me at least, I'm at the point where it's not natural. I have to remind myself, and the more I do it, the better I get. Not to say I'm so great, but I'm better than when I don't do it. Let's put it that way. I have to keep reminding myself, but that's so I really like this this Zoom conference. I appreciate you for putting it together, and thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us. And
Thank you.
yeah, and it's really a treat to have Andrew here. He's just so amazing, and I highly recommend his book. And we meet every Friday like this. So
Cool.
I hope you will return and for future reference and all. Yeah.
Thank you for being there. And quick little note before
Okay.
Mark hits the stop button, if people want to check out the book, they can go to lastlawofattractionbook.com or youtube.com/Andrew Kap. Either one of those will hopefully be a good resource for people.
We'll share those links too when we put up this video, and we'll send you a link of the video, but we will put this video on Abraham Fun and pin it to the top, and then we'll put your two links there.
Thank you so much
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys, don't anybody go away. But I'm just going to express it for everybody. Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm going to put an intention out there that you'll be back.
Thank you. It's already done. I'm already looking forward to it.
All right, hold on. Let's stop the recording.
And Andrew.